Douglas Ross, thank you very much for this, your time. What do you see as driving the surge in support for Scottish independence?
The response to Brexit and the response to this pandemic has clearly influenced some voters in terms of their perceptions about independence and how they would vote if there were ever to be another independence referendum.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I think we've just got to look at the response that we're seeing from people and not ignore it. They are saying there are reasons here, and I think it is looking at the union potentially being more divided, the fact that there is no consistency in messaging and support right across the union, and it's looking to drive into that and see what the response can be. Because if we just accept it, that independence is inevitable, then we've done the SNP's job for them, and I'm not willing to do that. So I want to look into all these areas, and I want to offer alternatives to that for both the UK government and us as a party, as Conservative and Unionists, to drive forward this message that there are very strong supporters of the union, and it's not inevitable that our country will be separate from the rest of the UK.
There has been a lot of frustration from Unionists in Scotland. You are the de facto leader of unionism in Scotland, standing up for these people. Nicola Sturgeon, the de facto leader of independence. They believe that this is now a Prime Minister who is a little Englander. He's too focused on an English Brexit. He's too focused on English issues. Is that right?
Well, I think when you look at the response to the announcement on the lockdown at the weekend, I very quickly said it should be an absolute guarantee from the UK government that should a similar decision be needed in Scotland, not just in the month that it is going to be held in England, but at any point during this pandemic, then the financial support for the furlough scheme that Rishi Sunak introduced back in March, that has protected hundreds of thousands of jobs in Scotland, it should be guaranteed. It shouldn't be a request. So from that point of view, I was saying to the UK government, we have to get far better at this.
And do you have a criticism that it wasn't made available to Scotland or Wales before now?
I've got a criticism that this only comes about after tougher measures are introduced in England. I'm going to call that out if I think the UK government haven't done enough to outline their future support should this be needed in Scotland, and I want to ensure the two governments work together. But by not doing that, it allows the nationalists to pick a fight with the UK government that I don't think is helpful during a pandemic.
But the Scottish Tories had been opposing the Scottish Government's call to have furlough extended at 80%.
No, because we have not, and I hope we do not, need to go back into a full lockdown.
You have been calling out the UK government. You said that the case for Scottish independence is now being made more effectively at Westminster than it ever could be by the SNP at Holyrood. So what is it about this UK government currently that is so effective at driving up support for Scottish independence?
Well, I've said it's not just this UK government, it is a series of UK governments, both Labour and Conservative.
But focusing on this UK government.
But I think it is important to say that it is both Labour and Conservative since 1999, the referendum in 1997, that there has been a feeling, a mentality within Whitehall of devolve and forget. And I don't think that's right, because just because there is devolution and education is run by the Scottish Government in Scotland doesn't mean there should be a disinterest into how education is provided in Scotland and how the funding from the UK Government delivers many services right across the country. So I think it is a criticism, and I really want people to look in the mirror, to look at themselves as unionists, as Conservative and Unionists, whether they're government ministers, whether they're party members, MPs, and say, have they been guilty of that, and could they do more to strengthen the case for the union?
Personally, who do you think has been a more effective leader through this pandemic, Boris Johnson or Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, I will answer this honestly, that I don't think anyone comes out of this as a competition, as a winner or a loser.
Not about competition, but who's been a more effective leader?
In the UK and right around the world, leaders have made mistakes.
All of the opinion polling suggests that people in Scotland prefer, rightly or wrongly, they prefer Nicola Sturgeon's handling of this pandemic. Are you in agreement with them?
No, because I think if you look at the decision over the weekend by the Prime Minister to put England into lockdown, I think it was wrong to so strongly say in the days and weeks before that lockdown wouldn't happen. Because if this pandemic has shown us anything, is that the circumstances change and you can't rule anything out. In the same way, I think if you look in Scotland, there are many families grieving, wondering why their relatives had a positive COVID test in hospital and were sent into a care home setting. So there is no way I'm going to say here one leader has done better than the other when both leaders have made mistakes, have made serious mistakes, and we will have to look at that going forward, at how we minimise those mistakes and how we stop them happening again.
I've been questioning the First Minister at these daily briefings about the exact issues you're talking about there, but again, objectively, we can say that the First Minister of Scotland has exposed herself to these daily briefings. She's exposed herself to scrutiny. And one of the criticisms of the Prime Minister is that he's been posted missing He's not been giving himself the same level of scrutiny, exposing himself to the same degree of questions. Is that not a sign of better leadership from Nicola Sturgeon?
Well, I think communication is really important during this pandemic.
Is Nicola Sturgeon a better communicator?
Yes. I mean, I think most objective people would say she's a better communicator than the Prime Minister. That doesn't mean she's had a better pandemic.
Boris Johnson has a negative 57 approval rating in Scotland. Nicola Sturgeon plus 49. That's massive. And it's at the same time that support for independence is surging up. Difficult question to put to you as the leader of the Scottish Conservatives, but please, can you answer this honestly? Do you think that Boris Johnson, in the way he is behaving now as Prime Minister, is being harmful to the case for Scotland staying in the UK?
You can't say that the people of Scotland are absolutely wrong with their ratings on their various leaders. So we've got to reflect on that, and the Prime Minister reflects on it. He gets these opinion polls as well. He's not blind to opinion in Scotland.
But that's quite an admission for the leader of the Scottish Conservatives to be effectively, you're saying that the Prime Minister, the UK Prime Minister, who is a Conservative Prime Minister, is damaging the case for Scotland staying in the UK.
You asked me for an honest answer, so
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit here
Look,
and
I appreciate the honesty of your answer, but what I'm saying is that's a quite startling admission, and it's a huge wake-up call for this UK government.
I'm not going to paint this more flowery than it is. You cannot get away from the current figures, but what you can do is you can look at them, you can address the issues behind them, and you can say to the people of Scotland that you take note of this. You take note of their concerns, you take note of the issues that they're raising, because if we don't, if we just ignore it and say that's not relevant or we don't believe it, the only people that win are the nationalists.
Brexit, as well as the pandemic, is an issue that all of the polls suggest are making life much harder for unionists. Scots didn't vote for Brexit. All of the polls indicate they don't want Brexit. How on earth do you sell the message to people that they're better off in a UK that's taking them out of the EU against their will? 62%
of people in Scotland voted to remain in the European Union, but many of them also respect the result of referendums, and I think they had hoped 4 years on, more than 4 years on, that this issue would have been settled by now, it would have been delivered by now, and I think both this current government and the previous UK government could have done more to heal some of the wounds that were inflicted during that 2016 referendum campaign.
Some of the messaging of Brexit as well. I mean, we talk about the £350 million on the side of the bus that Boris Johnson defended at the time. He's now the Prime Minister, and Scots just don't buy that.
Yeah, and Nicola Sturgeon defended the SNP's white paper that said oil will be £114 a barrel in an independent Scotland. I think it's really, we see in referendum campaigns sometimes divisive campaigns, things that are said that are not matched by reality.
The polls don't deliver independence. It takes the Prime Minister to grant a second referendum. Now, I know we've gone over and over this ground of once in a generation. Realistically, if we were looking at the next term of the Scottish Parliament, elections next year, the SNP could be trying to have a referendum in 2024. That would be 10 years on from the last referendum, and a lot of water has passed under the bridge. 3 prime ministers at least, a global pandemic, Brexit, all of that. If the polls keep going the way they're going, do you think that it's more harmful to just say no?
Well, I'm not going to make assumptions on the outcome of the election next year before that campaign has even started, before a single vote has been cast or a single vote has been counted. But your question was about the SNP thinking about a referendum in 2024, a decade on from 2014. That's not what they're saying. You've got the Cabinet Secretary for the Constitution in the Scottish Government, the SNP's Mike Russell, saying he would like an election next year. You've got Fiona Hislop.
I'm sure Nicola Sturgeon would have had it yesterday if she could, but you could be having it in 2024.
But these are government ministers right now. Mike Russell, Fiona Hislop, I was on a panel with her on Any Questions last week, wouldn't rule one out next year either. She wants one as quickly as possible. Is it really right that the SNP, some of their most senior ministers, are speaking about another divisive referendum next year when this country is still facing the pandemic that is taking lives, that is taking jobs, and the response that we continue to have to make to ensure our health service isn't overwhelmed by this, to ensure that we minimise the number of jobs lost, that the number of businesses that may go bust? I don't think anyone expects their politicians in the next 5-year Parliament to be focused on party political issues such as independence for the SNP, separating Scotland from the rest of the UK.
That may well be entirely true. I'm entirely sure that you believe that and many other unionists believe that. But the opinion polls say different. The opinion polls, not on the timing, while the Conservatives are saying no and keep saying no, support for independence is going up and up and up.
You're saying that people who support independence don't believe that it should be put off because of the pandemic. I think Nicola Sturgeon has even accepted that her focus has to be on dealing with this pandemic. I would have far preferred in her government's programme for government earlier on this year to have a focus on education, for example. But they didn't reintroduce their education bill, but they did reintroduce a referendum bill, or they plan to reintroduce a referendum bill. That is not outlining that your focus is on the services that people rely on day in, day out. But it is saying that your focus is on another separation referendum. I don't think that's where the people are just now, and I think we've got to get back to the issues that people want us to focus on as politicians at both a UK level and a Scottish level, day in, day out, and that's education, health, the economy. All these issues deserve our attention, and we shouldn't be distracted by another divisive independence referendum.
What have you told the Prime Minister, though? What's your plan to stop this trajectory?
It is ensuring that the Union and the UK government is not forgotten about in Scotland, because in many ways, with devolution, a lot of the services that people get on a daily basis are delivered by the Scottish Government, and then it's almost easier for them to forget the role that the UK Government plays. So we can do more. For example, when powers come back from the European Union and opportunities to fund directly into Scotland can come from the UK Government. The UK Government should be able to complement what is happening with the Scottish Government in terms of spending, to show people in their own individual area and community that there is direct investment from the UK Government, to show that Scotland's two governments can work together, can deliver for their area, and that is just one tangible example of what people can see from the Shared Prosperity Fund, for example, that's coming forward from the UK Government.
And moving on from all of this, there's one issue that has dominated UK politics over the last couple of weeks. It was about the issue of free school meals. You believe that they should get the free school meals over Christmas?
Yes.
So why didn't you vote for it?
Because it was an England-only issue, and I think when decisions are being taken that directly affect my constituents, I have to be there and I have to vote on that. When decisions are taken that only affect constituencies in England, then it is right that English representatives vote on that.
That didn't stop any of your colleagues in the Scottish Conservative Party going there and voting against children being given free school meals?
No, but it will stop that happening again. I've made it very clear we will not be voting on issues that only affect England. But I don't take anything away from this campaign. I think what Marcus Rashford has done, it has been an outstanding campaign. It was a campaign that changed the government's opinion back in the summer, and I think the government will have to continue to look at this because it's not gone away. There'll be further votes in Parliament. They'll have to respond to that. But I'm also saying to the SNP, they've got an opportunity to do more here in Scotland. They have an opportunity to follow my lead, to take my suggestion from one of the early policy papers I delivered as leader, to extend free school meals to every primary school pupil in Scotland, not just P1 to 3, extend it right the way through to P7, and also provide free school breakfasts. And if the SNP are serious about this issue, they can get behind my call, they can put a debate into Parliament straight away, and we can have a vote on that in Holyrood. And if the other parties agree with the Scottish Conservative position on this, we can deliver this major change for free school meals right across Scotland.
And just very final question, Douglas Ross. You will be standing to be First Minister for Scotland next year?
Yes, every leader of a political party is doing that.
That wasn't the question.
Oh, right, okay, I thought that was an easy end.
No. You will be standing to be leader of First Minister of Scotland next year. What are your three main policies that would separate you from the SNP and also from the UK government at Westminster?
On education, I want to see wholesale change to our school estate, because for too many pupils and teachers are working in schools that are of a poor or bad quality rating, an independent rating given to them. So I want by the end of the next Parliament, under Scottish Conservative plans, to ensure no pupil goes to school in the classroom in the two lowest bands for condition. And that also affects the teachers. I want to ensure that we have an economic response, not just to COVID-19, but to generally Scottish businesses, to jobs, to the economy. And I did that in my Power Up Scotland paper, a paper I delivered in my very first month as leader. It is ambitious. It has plans that the SNP could introduce straight away to change how we deliver our economic response in this country. And I also want to see a justice system that works for the victims and not the criminals. And we've seen for too long that this SNP government is a soft touch on justice, and I want to change that. And again, I've put forward policies at how we can do that.
Douglas Ross, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.